So we're now doing what we call Location Scout Saturdays because, and this is why our $20,000 project turned into over $40,000 project, which we've sunk our own money into. One of the things you always want to take into account as a storyteller, particularly if you're using locations, is that is a part of your budget. And you've got to always be thinking about your budget even before you go get the money.
I can feel it in my bones, and it's into a Simone. Got me looking like a clown. Summer always let us down.
So we're going to Anaheim today to this coffee shop called Requiem. And I wanted to look at it because it had this ethereal kind of, fantasy. It's a fantasy theme. And one of the main backdrops of the actual feature, and it'll be kind of an inspirational piece, I guess you could say, in the two main characters in the prequel portion of this will be in a coffee shop art gallery. And so I've just always wanted to find that perfect space that can, and perfect's a bad word to use, but just that space that just feels like the characters. It looks like an art gallery that the artist would have and a coffee shop that the husband would have. And so that's why we're headed to look at that. And weekends to follow, Rell and I are kind of trying to look for a content creation space that can also double as a home. So we'll be looking at some spaces like that, and we can possibly use that for some of the pieces with the couple. But today we're headed to Anaheim because I want to look at this. And we'll look at other coffee shops too. This isn't going to be the only one. But at first I was like, oh, we can't just go to Anaheim and go to Disneyland. Like, Rell and I aren't Disneyland. I am a Disneyland person. Rell, not so much. But,
I wouldn't know. I've never been.
well, we have to go down one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go down one day.
It'd be a creepy old couple like Disneyland.
Well, honey, grown couples go to Disneyland.
That didn't change what I said.
But they're not creepy because they're at Disneyland. Lord have mercy. So anyway, no, don't whisper it. So Rell and I, 2 years ago, Rell said, if I could give you, at the time it was $20,000, right? $20,000. Would you want to put it towards the media company we've been trying to build, or do you want to make a film? I stupidly said I want to make a film because I came up in the traditional ways of storytelling with working in television, and of course wanted to transition into narrative because I've been primarily in nonfiction, and I know that you can't really make those transitions without proof of concept showing that you can create that type of story before people take a chance on you in narrative. So I said, well, I want to do a film. And I shouldn't say stupidly, I was taking a risk,
There
but
you go.
I took a risk that I probably still, maybe if it was Rell and I completely working on it together, I think it would have worked. I actually started to work on the project with a friend who was familiar with New Orleans because she's from the South and had people down in New Orleans that she knew. And we actually took time to, you can attest to this, like we flew to New Orleans like 2 or 3 times prior and hired an assistant there that was familiar with the area to kind of help us, navigate what we needed in terms of storage unit, buying supplies, office supplies for our production office, helping us in terms of connecting with crew we were hiring locally and getting them to the location we were using. I was really trying to figure out a way to keep expenses down to really not go over 20,000 because it really it was a small short. And I was trying to hire actors locally, only ended up really hiring one actor locally. And crew wise, I actually had hired an initial DP at the time that was local to there. We actually split it up over 2 weekends. It was going to be a weekend between, which gave us a chance to look at the footage from the first weekend, assess, and just kind of figure out what we needed to shoot for the second weekend, and of course try to grab pickups where we could, and B-roll and all that great stuff. 3 weeks out from filming, I lost that DP to a Bravo series, which I get it. Look, you have a chance to make 3 to 4 months worth of work, and anybody that works in production understands this. You grab it where you can grab it. So you have a chance to make what you need to make for 3 to 4 months of work versus 2 weekends where he was going to get $800 a day. And for now, granted, the days were like 6-hour shoot days. I was trying to keep it between 6 to 8 hours. I wasn't trying to go like the standard that they do now, which is like 12. And typically you go over, but I was trying to keep it, tight. So it was a huge loss because he was great. He had a lookbook that looked amazing. He had a super great attitude, was really invested in the story with great sound mixer. Shout out to our sound mixer. But needless to say, with time running out, and I just basically, my assistant and I, was a recent college grad actually, we just ended up trying to like put out feelers, see what we could grab, and I got somebody within a week and a half to 2 weeks of filming. Never looked at the lookbook we created, never looked at the video packages we created, wasn't big on email, only communicated through text, and that was like sporadically. And needless to say, it just wasn't the same comfort level of the person we had prepped with. And so I came back with 2 weekends worth of basically unusable footage. Great audio, but unusable footage. And considering that my partner in life is an editor by trade, it was really disconcerting because I've seen him kind of work magic on stuff that's been like, I know editors don't like to call it magic, but I felt like I've seen him work magic on things that I was just like, I don't even know how we're gonna make this work. Basically, we had no reverse angles, right? Like not any usable ones.
Yeah, usable.
No, like hardly any coverage, which is like crazy, even though I was like, and I was uncharacteristic. I stepped out of myself on that filming that project, like constantly getting frustrated, like snapping at people because I just really wanted it to be a good project. And I was like, where am I not communicating correctly? And we even went over the footage the week after the first week of filming, and the first comment was, oh, you want it to be cinematic from our cinematographer. You never want your DP to say that when you're doing a film that you want it to look cinematic. That's the red light right there. Plus, he's only using a 50, and I think I've seen film students use a 50 better than what I saw him doing with 50 millimeter glass. So after all of that rambling that I just did, I want to do the project. I actually had a clear vision of what I wanted to do. There were so many offshoot projects I wanted to try to do with it in terms of, a narrative podcast, prequel. This particular film is a prequel to actually a feature that I wrote during COVID. So although I really want to, it's a New Orleans-based story that I wrote, I am going to kind of do what we all tend to do in our field, and I will be try to film most of it out here. LA has a tax incentives now.
Slide left toward West 135th Street.
And some pretty great ones as incentives to get more projects to be filmed out here. And we can always get New Orleans stock B-roll. And it can look like New Orleans, but I just would rather be out here where I've connected with more people out here that I've known for years. So we're now doing what we call Location Scout Saturdays, because one of the things I didn't do, and this is why our $20,000 project turned into over $40,000 project, which we sunk our own money into. We location scouted, don't get me wrong, we location scouted, but we didn't take into account, one of the things you always want to take into account as a storyteller, particularly if you're using locations. If you're using your house, high five. But if you are using locations, one of the things that you always want to keep in mind with locations is that is a part of your budget. And you've got to always be thinking about your budget even before you go get the money. You're probably like, duh. And those of you that are in film school are probably like, duh. But you don't understand, Terrell and I worked on very large productions for networks where it's like everybody has a position. My position was literally to think about creative and telling the story and making the story work. And his was telling it visually in the edit. So I never had to think about budget. And I had line producers and EICs telling me no, but I never had to think about why they were telling me no, what the significance of them telling me no was. One of the things that I learned is that get as close to your numbers and your budget as you possibly can. And of course you need to pad, you have to pad, because you need that just in case money. Crazy. As a storyteller, one of the things that I learned doing independent projects is that the way you envision it in your head may not be always what you can get, right? Because especially when you're working with a limited budget, sometimes you got to go for what you can get when you're talking about a limited budget. And that right now I'm really trying to do this project minimum 50, 60, ideally 80, but it is a short project. People will tell you different things, but I'm gonna be honest with most of you, like, short films are proof of concept. I don't care what anybody says. It's never, you're always trying to shoot the feature. Unless you're truly doing the festival circuit, very rarely are they going to air a short film on any platform unless it's it's one. And I know ABFF used to have HBO. They probably do HBO sponsored one, and so I think during Black History Month they'd run all of their finalists. But 9 times out of 10, your short film is truly a proof of concept because you want to get to that feature. I want to share this series because it's a Black family. It deals with a woman in the arts. The husband is a businessman, and they have like an incredibly talented daughter who takes a lot after both parents. And I don't know, I just feel like we don't have enough stories too about just Black families that aren't always, there's some tragedy in this, but it's not like the traditional tragedy that you would think.
Stemming from Black trauma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I loved about American Fiction that we saw this year. It was kind of cool where it was, there was some trauma, but there was it was a relatable story no matter what race you were. 24! Did you get it or not?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, sorry. I tried to slow up, but I was like flying. That's another thing. We have to go downtown and see the Kobe statue.
Quarter mile, turn left onto Martin Luther King Jr. Street.
Chris Rock.
You know about Martin Luther King Jr.
So since we kind of have the time, and I want to get the numbers as accurate as I possibly can, Rell and I are going to try to do some location scouting over the next month or so. I like that Rell's going with me because there's other projects we want to do. That's another thing I'd like to say for people too, don't think of a location scout if it's not a location that you feel like works for your current project. Don't look at it as a waste, because places I've seen that didn't work out, I always thought, I could possibly use it for something else. Because Terrell and I've typically come out of pocket for things that we've tried to create, independently, we skimped on things that I felt like he and I could really have used. We could have come back to those locations. So I just want to tell people that if you do feel like it's a location that may not work for a particular project, always keep it in mind because it could work for something else.
Sure.
That's another thing I want to tell people is I would say the more places you can see, the better. If you have a location scout you can actually work with that can kind of help narrow down what you're looking for, that helps. Because sometimes when you see too many places, it's hard for you to make a decision on which place you want to actually use. Location scouts, that is their job. Their job is to literally know the best place for you, or the best places. And sometimes you're saying what you need the areas to look like, what time period you're talking about, because that's the cool part too. I've seen location scouts find places that, say you're doing a period piece and you need it to look like it's the 70s, and they can find places even in like Massachusetts that can kind of like look like New York in the 70s. It's really cool. So if you can do that, I say do it, And if you can afford to pay a location scout, again, because Rell and I tag team back again, we end up doing a lot of the leg work on our own. So no problem with that. And especially a lot of you independent creatives. Love how y'all do that. Y'all are like, I'm gonna go out here, I'm gonna do this, I love it. I'm high-fiving them all for it. So, but yeah, so we're on our way to, like I said, to Requiem Coffee. I believe it's Coffee, Tea, and Fantasy. In Anaheim. Take a look at a potential coffee shop art gallery.
Back in my bag, yo.
We made it.
Back in my bag and I gotta brag, I do this shit for real. When we was down and we had nothing, we had to share a meal. We put the shit in overdrive with no steering wheel. Shorty throw that thing back in the pair of
we finished at Owl House and Requiem. Requiem Coffee, Tea, and Fantasy.
Requiem.
Requiem.
Like the movie with
Requiem. Requiem Coffee, Tea, and Fantasy. It was cool. It was fun. I mean, I definitely want us to get a little bit more out of the scouting.
Ultimately, can you use that space? What are your final thoughts on?
If I do a kids program, yes. Well, okay. Final thoughts on the space. I think I think basically we realized it was out of our price range. Because if they're doing partnerships with Disney, that ain't where we're kicking it. If our budget can't go over $80,000. And then I would say it'll be cool, like if we do get to do brand partnerships and do them with Disney, then we know Requiem is a
option.
Yeah, thank you, honey.
Yep.
Why are my words always so off when I get on camera?
I don't know.
And so we finished there, and now we're getting ready to head back home. Yeah. We're just charging right now, and anybody that knows what charging is like, if you have an EV vehicle and you don't live in a house, and you live in a complex and you have to charge outside, it is like, what is it like?
It's like the Wild Wild West.
It is like the Wild Wild
Survival
West.
of the fittest.
It really is only the strong survive. So we're trying to get our charge on because we're driving back from Anaheim, so we needed to get some juice on our tank before we rolled all the way back. But if you see the blue floodlight, it's because we're in an area where there needs to be a police floodlight, so pray for us. And we want to thank y'all for kicking it with us, and we're going to take you on the road again next week. We haven't decided. Maybe you guys have ideas. You know what? During the week, I'm going to talk to you guys more about the story, and maybe you'll have ideas of areas.
Why do you keep looking at me?
Oh,
Look
sorry.
at the camera.
So if you guys have suggestions of where we can go next week, that would be great. You know what? We're going to try to look in the Encino, Lake Balboa, Toluca Lake, Woodland Hills area next week. So maybe you guys have some suggestions. I'm going to tell you guys more about the story, tell you what locations I'm looking for, and would love for you all to send your suggestions if you were SoCal people and have some ideas. It'd be great to hear from you all. Okay. Until then, thank you for spending your most precious asset with us, which is your time. Peace.